Just hearing that opening riff gets me pumped. When I was a kid, this series was one of my all-time favorites. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was one of the few series that actually made me want to play outside. I would create Power Ranger masks out of yarn, paper, and crayons, tie them around my head, go out and find the toughest stick I could handle from the trees that surrounded my house, and start swinging at invisible baddies until my chubby self just couldn't defend the earth from imaginary baddies any longer. The original series saw 3 seasons, a theatrical release, and way more toys than my mother was willing to buy for me, much to my dismay. Joke's on her, because now I'm a giant man-child with hundreds of toys and the ability to buy all the Power Rangers I want. Ha 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 ha! Who has the debit card at a minimum wage job now, Mom? Mighty Morphin Power Rangers debuted on August 28, 1993, and was loved all over. Until it wasn't. Some people thought it was violent. Apparently, punching and kicking people is considered to be too violent, and the show was even pulled from some countries because of this, except that one country that thought they were promoting the use of morphine with their catchphrase.
It's morphin' time!
Anyway, this show was made by Haim Saban, who was inspired by the source material when that's all that was on his TV in his hotel room while on a business trip in Japan. However, this is not the first attempt at bringing a series like this to a Western audience. The late, great Shotaro Ishinomori, the same guy who gave us Kamen Rider, Android Kakaider, and Cyborg 009, created a colorful team of superheroes known as Himitsu Sentai Go Ranger, the first Super Sentai team. The next would be a team known as Jakka. This one features my favorite old school Sentai character. These would eventually catch the attention of a little-known comic writer. You may have heard of him. Stan Lee? He and Marvel were very interested in bringing Super Sentai to the West and struck a 3-year deal with Toei, the company over Super Sentai. Stan Lee and Marvel helped create a series with Toei that would be made in the same style as those previously mentioned, and the first to feature a future series staple, the giant robot, and it was Spider-Man! Spider-Man was the story of Japanese, not Peter Parker, the motorcycle racing son of a scientist who is nearly killed, then saved by an alien from the planet Spider. He gives not Peter Parker his powers and a spaceship. Marveler. Clever name. Inside the Marveler is a robot called Leopardon. He would always appear when the rubber monsters got too big to be taken down with ropes, nets, and terrible catchphrases. Spider-Man was short-lived, but has gone on to be featured alongside his Leopardon, albeit briefly, in the Spider-Verse comics. Their first joint venture after the Japanese version of Spider-Man was a Super Sentai team called Battle Fever J. This is the first in the actual Sentai series to feature a giant robot. The deal that was struck between Marvel and Toei was to allow each respective company to adapt others' material for their respective audiences. But this only works if your audience is interested in the material to begin with. Battle Fever and the other 2 Sentai series, influenced by Marvel, never aired in the West. Marvel couldn't sell it to Western networks, despite the series' success in its homeland. Toei continued to create new Super Sentai year after year, through the 70s and 80s, without any of it seeing a Western release. Minus a brief parody dub of Dynaman, but we don't talk about that. That is, until a very enthusiastic Saban came around. He was very determined, as well as every other word that was related to determined in the thesaurus. He made a pilot called Bioman that used footage from the Sentai series Shodenshi Bioman, spliced together with footage of Western actors. This didn't go anywhere, so he tried again, this time replacing the Bioman footage with Kyoryu Sentai! Zyuranger! He would eventually find success with Fox on their Fox Kids block with the new and improved Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Just as before, Saban spliced in footage of the Sentai series Zyuranger with American actors, and they had a hit on their hands. MMPR would go on for 3 seasons and even get a movie. There was even a Japanese dub of Power Rangers. How weird is that? Though unlike modern incarnations of the franchise, rather than stretch out the source material into multiple seasons, MMPR would instead take more creative liberty and use the same suits as before, with one exception, and splice it in with monsters and robots from the following Sentai series. You could always tell when it was American footage of the Rangers thanks to a very slight difference in the costume. In the original Zyuranger, the helmets didn't have these clips on the sides. The American actors also sometimes used these weird neck braces. They did, however, continue to rely on Japanese footage for their Zords. That's the name they gave to their giant robots, and the Megazord, which is all the giant robots combined. I would say at least 95% of the time, all of the footage was Japanese, but there, I think, were one or two instances where they used their own Zord costumes to make a scene. There was a point in the series where they did use the actual costumes of the future Sentai they were pulling from in season 3.5, /4. It really depends on who you ask. It happens between season 3 and 4. But they did a weird thing with that. Alien. They used the ninja-themed suits of the series, but made the civilian counterparts these weird aquatic aliens. Meanwhile, our beloved Power Rangers had been turned into children, like it was some Star Trek plotline or something. I think they were testing the waters. They wanted to see if fans would accept new Rangers taking up the fight without the inclusion of the old. They had already did some cast changes mid-second season. Some say it was to address some very obvious racist overtones. Some say it was time to re-up contracts, and 3 of the 6 said, "I'm out."
We had some conversations maybe at some point that maybe could have gone better. We didn't see eye to eye on what he was paying us in the show, and very quickly that went to attorneys and we stopped talking about it.
Whatever the case, there would always be one Ranger who would stick it out to the very end. To this day, this guy still thinks he's a Power Ranger. I mean, let's face it, he is. He's now donned 6 different Ranger costumes and still makes appearances as the Green Ranger. Tommy Oliver is, and forever will be, the Power Ranger. At least in his mind. No, seriously, Jason David Frank has been the Green Ranger, the White Ranger, Zeo Red, Turbo Red, and Dino Thunder Black. Then Boom Studios Comics had to up the ante and make a 6th incarnation of Tommy known as Lord Draken, the Shattered Grid what-if version of Tommy. But this didn't stop at comics. He has officially appeared as Lord Draken, the version of Tommy that stayed evil when he became the Green Ranger. Looking back, this series is silly. There's bad acting.
It's where you belong.
Wrong voice lines.
Give it up, Tommy! No way!
All the swooshy sound effects anyone can handle. Invader Zim as a flying saucer with arms and legs.
Zordon, they've done it! They made the metamorphosis!
Good.
There's that one time in the movie where Bleach depressingly called himself a frog.
I'm a frog.
That one time in the movie where they fought Grandpa Munster.
How about taking another quack at it?
That one time in the movie where they had an early 90s CGI Megazord. That one time in the movie where they had an early 90s CGI Megazord kick the early 90s CGI bad guy in the nuts. That one time where the movie existed. This.
Ah, and this here is my favorite of them all, Mr. Tickle Sneezer. He can capture things and put them in a magic bottle.
A nice shiny car. Yep, that's a goodie, all right. In you go. Gotcha. Oh, and there are even extra little goodies inside.
That being said, I still have all the nostalgia feels for this show. I remember vividly the day my little brother was born. I was the 8-year-old watching Green with Evil, the multi-part episode where Tommy was introduced in the hospital room, waiting on my mom to give me a little brother, who at the time I thought was a sister. But let's not get into that. Man, the 90s were a different time. So that was a brief summary of how the Power Rangers came to be. The West wanted it from the very beginning, way back in the 70s, but had to wait almost 20 years before it would happen, even with the immortal powers of Stan Lee pulling for it. Even though it took so long to get here, obviously they were on the right track, because the franchise is still going today, both in the East with Super Sentai and the West. Thank you so much for watching. I have been a potato, and I hope I have explained how Power Rangers came to be in a way that was both entertaining and educating. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe. I'm trying to make these videos happen every week. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. And remember, I'm filled with starchy goodness.